r/AskReddit. What is something that your parents did that you swore never to repeat to your own kids? Be unapproachable. Come talk to me anytime about anything. Everything can be fixed. My son hides things from his mom and waits until he can tell me because she won't respond appropriately. He lost a video game and was lying to her about having lost it, but was so scared that she would find out he was lying. He told me in the car when I picked him up, and I told her I needed to look for something of his that he wanted. All he ended up doing was having it wedged in his game case where he couldn't see it. My 6-year-old was giving himself anxiety because of a stupid Nintendo Switch game because his mom would have belittled and spanked him instead of helping look for it. It breaks my heart. Edit. We are divorced. Edit 2. I'm getting entirely too much advice from what are obviously children and wanting me to violate court orders or to report spankings as abuse. I'm also sorry some of you feel I'm a bad parent because I can't get sole custody and take away his mother's visitation. The real world is different from Reddit, folks. My mom at least had always done this. I would spend an hour looking for something until she got mad and said, I swear, if I find this you're in big trouble. The whole time she would yell at me on how stupid I was till she exploded when she found it, and eventually I would have to her apologize, which made her even worse. It may not seem like much, but after a while you learn to hide small and big struggles so she doesn't explode. Teaching them by comparing them to their own better behaved / smarter siblings. In a very condescending manner. OFC. Crap, I was compared to other people's kids. Insert other kid's name. Would never do that to their parent. Man, I still am. Wells's friend wouldn't speak that way to their parent. Mom, I'm a 30-year-old man and you haven't even seen his friend since we were 9. You don't know crap. If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. That was stupid to me at 10 years old. My dad used to say that to me when I was younger, but instead I'd just cry more, and he just gave up. I also would tattle on him to my mom and she'd get after him. He never actually did anything. I wish that were the case. My dad would follow up with another spanking or belt whooping. Refuse to admit I was wrong. The only semblance of an apology I've ever received from my mother was, I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't think she's ever actually apologized or taken blame for her actions in my 30-odd conscious years. If I ever outsmarted my mom, it was considered attitude. I get her thought process. She of course had been around longer than a 13-year-old. So clearly there's nothing I could say to her she didn't already know, and she obviously knows better than me. My mom also never apologized. If it ever became clear she was in the wrong, she'd laugh and say she didn't remember saying that, or I must have had some sort of attitude and that's why she acted upset. That is not the philosophy I will bring to my kids. It's gonna be a learning experience for the both of us. My dad would get mad at me sometimes too, and a lot of those times were warranted, and a lot were not. Anytime I proved him wrong, he'd apologize immediately and leave it at that. One time when I was around 15, we were both being dickheads and didn't speak for a night. In retrospect I was the main dickhead, but he was a close second. He came in the next day and apologized anyway. He told me he was the adult in the situation and he hadn't been. He hated things being off with us, and he loved me. That is exactly how I hope to be with my kids. Never actually saying I love you. Edit. Just so everyone knows, my parents are very supportive, and I know they love me. They just lack a little in the showing emotions side of things. Yep, never once heard my parents say these words. I make sure my son knows I love him every single day. He's 20 and probably tired of it, but too bad. Lol. Username checks out. That's so wholesome. Constantly comparing myself to other people's kids and belittling my own achievements. That's just the equivalent of comparing your parents' wages, house, or job with other kids' parents. My parents always did this to me and then got really offended if I tried to do it to them. Like if I dared mention a friend going on vacation, they'd be super offended at the comparison when it wasn't even that. Because I said so. I always have a reason why I ask them to do something. If they ask why, I'll explain. I'll explain my reason, my reasons for my reason, various other factors I considered. I can go on for a while. They know this. The other day I asked my 7-year-old to do something. She said why. I thought about it for a secretary and I asked, is because I said so a good enough reason? She thought about it for a secretary and said, yeah. For about 3 seconds, I felt like I nailed parenting. Okay, I totally agree with this. My only thing is I have a nephew that always questions why before following directions and I'm terrified that if he goes in the road and I tell him to get back on the sidewalk he will question first instead of listening and then get hit by a car. Probably just me being paranoid though. It's a legit issue. Compliance is something you have to have for emergency situations. Sometimes there is no time to explain why something needs to be done. Sometimes you can't explain for another reason. Also, if the only way they will comply is if they know why, they are going to have a hard time as an employee. I won't scorn them or yell at them when they mess up. I was a really sensitive kid, so when my parents told me to go to hell or called me a ducking moron, it tore at me and distorted my self-image. If I have kids, I can't imagine ever doing to them what my parents did to me. Edit. This was my parents' attempt to get me to grow thicker skin. But words hurt. One thing led to another and depression began to take its hold. And at such a young age too. The thought of depression and self-hatred that required therapy sessions to manage terrified me. Thankfully, they took the hint and settled down, and I still keep in touch with them. Were you actually sensitive? Because calling your child a moron and telling them to go to hell aren't considered good parenting skills. In fact, it's quite abusive. This was my dad. He has 3 daughters. I've been called nothing short of an asshole, Little Beach, been told duck me. Granted, girls have attitudes, but when you're in and out of our lives because you can't take care of your mental health, are a womanizer, can't keep a job, are absent most of the time, forget to pick 2 kids from school, disrespect your wife, yell at everyone, are grumpy when you do decide to come home most of my childhood. What do you expect? Then during my teen years he popped up living with a woman who he claimed he just met, but he had been seeing her during my parents' marriage. After the divorce, I was forced to spend time at their apartment and play with her son, who for years I questioned if he may be my half-brother. My father never really got it together. He only became tolerable recently after a concussion made him meek, and plus he's getting older and perhaps too tired to be so mean and angry. Although my father has softened himself as he got older, it took him until he was 60 plus, but to this day we have very dry interactions. Our relationship is like walking on a landmine. We tread lightly with each other. I love him, but I wish I had someone I could have as a soft and encouraging person emotionally. But I've accepted that my dad doesn't have the capacity to be that way. My apologies for this long post. That was 30 years of emotional constipation coming out. Tell me I depress them when I confide in them. Sorry dude. When I came out about it, my mom blamed me and said, why are you doing this to me? Like I made up 10 plus years of depression to get at her or something. It's not a good feeling, and I get it. God yeah. I love my mom, but whenever I tell her how crap I feel she makes me feel awful for telling her. I always make the mistake of confiding in her and then regret it each time. When I was little, when my dad was doing anything out in the yard my brother and I would ask if we could help. The answer was always you can help by staying out of the way. My kids are always allowed to help and so feel they can contribute, grow a sense of self-worth and an appreciation of group effort. This has been the hardest thing for me as a parent, but I'm working on it. My 4-year-old wants to help me do absolutely everything, but sometimes I just don't have the time to spend doing something in 30 minutes that should have taken 5. He loves helping with the laundry and dishes though. I'm just leery about cooking. Edit. I don't think I can reply to everyone, so I wanted to say thank you for providing me with some tips and tricks. My dude really enjoys baking, so we'll work more on that and the science behind it. That's his favorite. I recently purchased some donut pans, so we'll be doing that today. Edit 2. Check out our donuts. Both the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old were great helpers and expert decorators. Mine is official stirrer and taster. Also, just tall enough for the cheese drawer, so cheese getter. If letting her help increases a task by 25 minutes, but reduces my pretend play responsibilities by 25 minutes, then hell yes. I feel bad. I loved it as a kid. I know it's important, but I hate pretend play. Really poor food choices. Same. I was raised on Hot Pockets and those instant lunch cups. Hey, don't you dare make fun of my cup noodles ever again. Beat me up. Child has black eyes from beatings. Father, you have your mother's eyes. As a victim of severe childhood trauma and abuse, I laughed out loud then got sad. Lecture. My mom could go on for hours for even small misbehaviors. Somehow, it usually looped around to how I didn't keep my room clean, even though the rest of the house was just as much of a mess or worse. When I need to have a stern or serious discussion with my kids, I force myself to make my point in 5 minutes or less. I've even said stuff like, look, this is taking way too long, just don't do this loud thing again, okay? I also apologize if I yell as soon as I'm emotionally able to after an angry outburst. I don't remember mom ever doing that. I received so many lectures that went on for ages while just repeating the same things over and over again. It was so frustrating to hear something said for the 14th time asked if I understood, and even when a yes answer was given the lecture still continued. This is so relatable. If I were to tell my mum that she was going on and on about something little, she would only start complaining even louder. Wake them from a dead sleep on a school night to introduce them to my drunk friends I just came home with because I'm a bartender. Oh crap, you reminded me of another one. I will never get drunk and make my son come find me and bring me home in the middle of the night before his high school finals. I will never make him bail me out of jail using personal favors. Threads like this make me want to say I'll never do anything that my mother did, but that simplifies a very complicated feeling. When my mother loved me, I felt like the greatest person in the world. It's complicated. It really is. Crafty and or abusive parents aren't abusive all of the time, and it makes it so hard to understand that you're not supposed to be living in the situation you are. It makes it difficult to either hate or forgive them. You just get stuck in this weird limbo. The best phrase I've ever heard in relation to this feeling is love your parents with as much room as they give you to do so. Redo things they've done because it's not the exact way I would have done it. My mom would refold the laundry or remake my bed. Drove me nuts and made me feel like why even bother trying? I sometimes wonder if I was affected by this same kind of thing. Not exactly the same, but essentially, when I was a kid, my mom would tell me to clean my room and make my bed. I'd do exactly that to the best of my ability, then I'd go get her so she could tell me if I was done. It almost never failed. She'd tell me that my room wasn't clean enough and my bed wasn't made enough. Then I was left to try to figure out what I was missing. I would try straightening things more, then get her again, and she'd tell me the room still wasn't clean enough and the bed not made enough. I would just feel baffled because I had no idea what more I could do before it was enough. I felt like there was some invisible mess that she could see, but somehow I couldn't. I couldn't understand what I was missing, and it would never be explained to me exactly what still needed to be straightened up, or what part of my bed still needed to be made. So now as an adult, in just about any context, I often have this underlying self-doubt that I'm missing something, somehow, and I can't trust myself to know when I've done enough. And I can't trust myself to know when I've done enough. I think this is the foundation of my tendency to overthink and self-doubt. My mom would redo things without explaining why, and my dad would just do them for me without letting me try. As an adult I nearly panic when someone is trying to teach me something, and I start to struggle. The only thing I feel like I can handle at that point is to be left alone for a while, to figure it out by myself. Not be affectionate. My mom was very distant and not a physically emotional person with me growing up. I realized that if I have kids I'd want to read to them, hug them, celebrate their accomplishments. Overall have them feel comfortable with me to share their thoughts or feelings. Edit. Whoa. Was not expecting any of the comments or upvotes at all. I just post and keep it moving. But you know what? Hugs for all, only if you consent. I enjoyed reading some of the comments so far and will continue. This has been the most affection I've gotten in quarantine, so I hope you're all doing better than I am. My husband expressed one time how his family wasn't a hugger type family when he grew up, and so he hugs me all the time. When my youngest was little it's a total man's boy and would get jealous and run in between us, which would lead to the eldest and the dog joining the fun. This has led to hug time, exactly like the Trolls movie. Someone calls hug time. That's it, you drop everything and hug. The dog even knows this statement. Edit, mama, not man's lol. Wholesome as duck. Get loaded in front of them. Growing up in a family of drunks has soured me for the most part to drinking even socially. I do partake occasionally but not often. Deep down I feel alcoholism is in my genetics, so I steer clear unless the occasion is perfect. Man, I'm struggling so much with this. Borderline alcoholic. Once I start, I find it very hard to stop. Day 5 of being sober. Edit. Wow guys. I woke up for work this morning and my inbox was chock full of supportive message. Some awards. Means a lot. I will not drink today. Thank you. You're a ducking rockstar. One day at a time. 1 hour at a time. If you have to. My 1 year is this month. My husband's 8th. Stay sturdy. Minimize anything they pursue. Edit. Hey, thanks for the award, that's so kind. My mother would absolutely burn down any dream I had as a kid. Singer? Well, that's nice, but it will never happen. Gymnast? We can't afford that. But she never went without beer, weed, or smokes. I was 12, of course it wasn't gonna happen. But Jesus woman, a little support. Try to be controlling over my kid's life and blame all their problems on the other parent. Dude, when I was 15 my dad, an MD, decided to have a meeting with me to discuss my future and make a choice what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a programmer so bad. I loved that crap. So I said programming/software engineering. He went on for over an hour how that profession is lame and you'll always be behind the scenes unrecognized. This was back in 2004. How wrong was he? So I didn't know what to tell him. I remember my cousin, who was a few years older at the time, told me accounting would be a good fit for me if I didn't know what to pick. It would be easy for me and I'd fly through my degree. So I remembered that and said alright, I'll go into accounting. He literally exploded in my face, yelling and shouting how could I throw my future away. I was scared of him. I never was close to him. He barely spent time with me my entire life. This grown-ass man was never there for me, but decided to control my life. I knew what he wanted me to say. I just wanted the yelling and shouting to stop, and I wanted him to calm down. So I said defeatedly, okay, I'll be a doctor. He immediately turned around, smiled happy and congratulated me. I felt what it's like to have a part of me die that day. I wasted 3 years of life on med school before I was like, duck this crap, got depressed and asked my sister to help me convince him to transfer over to engineering school. But my life was never the same. And my psyche was changed as well. I easily give up now, more irritable, can't sleep well at all, etc. So I get what you mean. My kids will choose what they want to be, even if it's ducking curling. If he didn't want an answer, why did he pose it as a question about what you want? Would have been more honest to just order you to be a doctor if you fail. It's on him. Use them as leverage against the other parent. Abuse them. Allow them to be abused by a significant other. Abandon them, then return years later once they've grown. And try to cause them as much pain as possible for who knows why. I have 4 sons and I genuinely can't imagine doing most of what happened to me to them. Blows my mind. Did your parents battle over who would get to claim you as dependents on their taxes too? Didn't expect to wake up to so many other people with the same experience. That's extremely sad. Oh, this was / is a big one for me. I'm so disappointed in it. Mom makes up to 6 figures, while dad makes 30,000. Mom asks him for money back on the taxes, because she'll let him have the 3 kids as dependents. So ducked up.